Hello, one and all, and welcome back to the Great Unknown Audio Show with me, your illustrious host and most appropriate face for radio, Maxim Jennings. We've had to divert away from the usual schedule, and the daily uploads in Tasmania have unfortunately come to an end as we find ourselves back in Melbourne for just over 12 hours. As I got on my flight from Hobart last night. So without further ado, we'll go back to where I left you in the last episode, on a beach on Adventure Bay, on Bruny Island. Following that, I did the Cape Queen Elizabeth walking track, which was very nice, very remote and isolated. One of the trails that was recommended to me by the campers that I met at Base Camp Tasmania. Very nice people, as I mentioned in the last episode, and it was a very nice walk, mainly sand orientated, as it finished off by going onto the beach and where I had my lunch. I enjoyed the remainder of the loaf that I bought from the bread fridge, which was very enjoyable, very good price. I tried to bank transfer the company, but unfortunately their account number didn't work with my phone, so I had to go get cash out, and then realised that I was only given 50s in terms of money. So I only wanted to pay $10 because that's how much it cost me for the loaf and 2 portions of the Anzac bread, which was definitely the highlight, I'd say, compared to the loaf. Although the sourdough was very nice, it was a bit dry. And whilst I was camping, I had some of that sourdough with some pork loin that I'd cooked up in the morning before for sandwiches for dinner whilst I was camping, which I forgot to mention. It was a tough eat alongside a tough sleep, as I've already mentioned. But I had the remainder of the bread, had that with some tzatziki and some hummus that I bought from a local shop, and that was a lot more enjoyable. So great to try it in 2 different varieties of food choices. So I spent about an hour on the beach before returning from Cape Queen Elizabeth walking track, to which I had to part and leave for the ferry again, which was a bit more populated than the last time, and I had to wait for 2 ferries before actually getting on, because it was a Sunday afternoon and everyone was trying to get back before the end of the weekend. No one wants to be stranded on Bruny Island with nowhere else to stay. And so I found myself in Hobart, where I checked into the Pickled Frog hostel. A very interesting hostel, very much frog themed. So it was one of those places that had a lot of permanent residents that were staying there, and there was a big group of them. And whilst I was making dinner, they even asked me to take a group photo of them. They were a peculiar bunch of people. Some of which probably weren't exactly my type of people for various reasons. I won't get into the nitty-gritty of it, but a few were a bit loud and irritating when I was trying to have some peace and quiet. But nonetheless, the hostel itself was very nice, had some good amenities. The kitchen was absolutely disgusting. And it had a weird shower formation, because that when you go into the shower, there was a shower curtain, but the curtain left only one hook, and then had 2 hooks on the outside of the curtain where you had to leave all your stuff. So you're either walking upstairs to go for a shower in just your towel and being completely naked underneath, or you're going in there, getting changed, and for the rest of the male bathroom to look at you get changed before putting your towel on the inside of the shower curtain. It was just a very peculiar setup. I wasn't at all a fan of it, and I found myself peeking around the shower curtain corner, making sure no one caught me naked as I was coming out to dry myself down, because there was not a lot of room, and it was very much a wet room as opposed to a bathroom. So nonetheless, that was an experience. And then I did a bit of exploring in Hobart the next day, as my flight was at 9:15 in the evening. So in doing so, I had to drop the car off at 9:30. So I got up at 8, put my bag in the luggage storage, and then proceeded to drive the car to the airport where I picked it up from, to then only get the bus back into town. So that was, I mean, it was either that or pay for an extra day for the rental car. So we had to kind of sum up the options. Which would have been better? Who knows? Anyway, I then got to explore Hobart a bit, went into the central business district and had a fantastic, rewarding beer at sunset before going to the airport at the Hobart Brewing Company, which is a very nice complex. A lot of the homemade beers, and then they had like a circus tent up, which was performing somewhat for Cirque du Soleil. So that was really interesting, seeing all the people glam up and get ready to go into a circus tent to watch that performance. That would have cost you 70 Australian dollars, so about 35 quid to watch that for about an hour and a half, so I don't know whether that would have been worth it. The beer wasn't a pint size, and I paid 12 Australian dollars for that. Anyway, it was an IPA, it was one of their own, so it's always good to try new beer whenever you get the chance, so that was quite enjoyable. And then I was able to watch a beautiful sunset in the background, right on the Docklands, so the location and the atmosphere was very good, and I thought very much worthwhile. And then after that, we had to depart Hobart, which as a city seemed like it had a lot of character, a big variety of different foods, but it felt very Australian as opposed to Tasmanian, if that makes sense at all by my previous descriptions. I think Tasmania as a land, as a country, most Tasmanians would describe it as very rural. This felt a bit too cosmopolitan and not very outdoorsy. But nonetheless, it was good to see the contrast of what I'd call proper Tasmania as opposed to modern Tasmania. But anyway, we had to go back to Hobart Airport. I took the Sky Bus, which is a direct bus to the airport from a stop just round the corner from the Pickled Frog Hostel. Great name, I have to admit. Really riveting at some points. Riveting. Almost works. And then we got to the airport, and I was surrounded by other people who were trying to get on a flight to Adelaide, which had been cancelled, unfortunately. So they had to go through the luggage drop thing just to be told that they were being put up in a hotel and their flight wasn't until the next morning. So, and then I was able to just fast track. When she said, "Oh, is anyone going back to Melbourne?" I went, "Yeah." She come straight to the front, and it was my first time ever getting somewhat of an upgrade. She went, "Oh, do you want an emergency seat with extended legroom?" And I was like, "Oh, yes, please. Yes, indeed. I will take that." She said, "Oh, are you willing to assist anyone in need of an emergency?" And I ummed up the options. Well, let me think about it, I guess. And she went, "Perfect." And I think she must have given me the upgrade for one of two reasons. Either she somehow found me partially attractive, knew that I was on my own, and knew that she'd be doing me a good favour, or she looked at the size of me and saw my very wide hips, a large derriere, and thought, this guy needs extra leg room, we're going to give it to him. And based upon the passenger who was next to me in the other emergency exit seat, he was a rather large gentleman as well. Thankfully there was no one in between us, otherwise that would have been a tight squeeze. So I'm going to take option 2 as the reason for why she gave me that extended leg room. But nonetheless, I thank her very kindly, the flight attendant who dealt with me. And the flight was smooth sailing. I watched Once Upon a Time in America, which is almost 4 hours of New York gangster motion picture based in the 1920s. Another De Niro classic. It's got an 8.5 on IMDb. But I do feel as though there were, for a movie that is so long, there are definitely some leads that aren't answered. And I found myself watching it in segments, just because it became a very extensive watch, if not. But I love the little flashbacks and cinematography in there, and good old school gunfights where when someone gets shot, you never see where the bullet goes. It's brilliant. I loved it. Robert De Niro he's a bit rapey in it though at some points, which is another side of him I hadn't seen yet. But I'm a sucker for American gangster films that were pre-21st century. So another great watch. And then I found myself, after the flight, back in Melbourne, which is where I am now, just finishing at Flat White and a very busy lunchtime side street, which is highly influenced by East Asian cuisine. But I am once again enjoying this little bit of chaos, and it's almost got that kind of murkiness. It's got a dark, smoky feel to it, with a bit of pollution in the air, just because of how many restaurants there are and how much electricity is being used. But I quite like it. It's got that certain je ne sais quoi to it, Australian style. So I'm going to finish this coffee, and then I've got to pick my bags up from the Selena hostel that I stayed at. Not that I explored it much. I have stayed in one before in Lake Atitlan in Guatemala, and that was a very nice hostel. This one, it did the job. The bed was good, and it had a little bit of privacy to it, so it wasn't too bad. And it had the late checkout time of 11 a.m, which is very rare, so that was good, very useful. So I'm going to probably grab a spot of lunch and then get on another Sky bus back to Melbourne Airport. And my flight, I believe, is at 3:05. So I've got just under 3 hours before flying. It takes about 35 minutes to get to the airport. So because it's a domestic flight, I don't need that much time. And before I come to Australia, I've never been on a domestic flight, but I feel like I'm going to be going on a bunch of them. And it's really weird not having to show your passport anywhere, I find. And so my next destination of choice, a 3-hour flight from Melbourne to Cairns, which I'd mentioned before. I've just booked 5 nights in what seems to be a party hostel. There wasn't really much variety unless you wanted to pay a pretty price, so we've gone for Bounce Hostel in Cairns, which has a pool. It's a lot hotter than Tasmania is at the moment, so probably an acclimatisation day, just so I don't fucking blow myself out within 24 hours of being there. So the next time you hear from me, as we conclude this episode, I will be in Cairns, giving you what I hope will be a different kind of report to what I've been doing in Tasmania. Probably quite booze-induced for the next few days, as I've been told by a few people who stayed in those hostels that they are very boozy. So, a little bit of a switch up, as I haven't had a proper drink in a while. In a while, I say a week. Alcoholic syndrome coming through again. But yeah, I've loved Tasmania, and so far in Australia, it's been my favourite place I've been, and I think lots of people who go there will say the same thing. And if I had to go back to Australia, I'd be going to Tasmania straight away, without a doubt. And I will definitely be returning to there. It's been my favourite place so far on this trip. I think it beats Nepal. I mean, Annapurna Base Camp is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. I would go back to Nepal, but I wouldn't go back to Annapurna. I'd do Everest. But I'd go back to Tasmania and do what I did again, or various other spots, because there's so much unexplored stuff that I didn't see as well. So, fantastic trip, nonetheless. Independent road trip, ticked off. Probably won't be the last of those. But, yeah, we make way for Cairns. Thank you very much for listening once again. I hope you enjoy listening to my voice in the next one. Goodbye.